Welcome to another episode of Inappropriate Growth. Today, we have an inspiring guest, Jessica Ell. Jessica is a leap of faith life coach with a passion for helping people break free from lives that make them feel trapped or stuck. Her journey is a testament to the power of embracing uncertainty and following what feels like destiny. From fundraising to owning a real estate and insurance agency, to marketing, to brain implant technology, to life coaching, and now bioplastics. Jessica's career transitions are nothing short of remarkable. She's also the host of the Ill-Advised podcast, where she shares ideas, insights, and inspiration for those ready to make bold decisions and reinvent themselves. Her new book, This Is So Much Worse Than I Expected, A Leap of Faith and Lessons Learned in Freefall, is available now for pre-order. But join us today as Jessica shares her insights on leaps of faith, the difference between clarity and certainty, and how to embrace continual change and transformation. Let's get inappropriate. Welcome to the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. And we're very excited to have Miss Jessica Ell. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yep, that's it.
I'm on a roll. Well, that's an easy one.
It's very simple.
Jessica, why not? So I don't have to do it. Why don't you tell our listeners where you are and how you got there?
Sure. So where I am physically, I am actually in the town I grew up in southwestern Indiana. It's about 15,000 people, maybe 17 on a good day, on a good year. And I ended up here through, I think, what happens for a lot of people, a lot of unexpected events. Like I grew up in Indiana and then went to school here and left as soon as I could. The day after graduation, I had my car loaded and I drove to Arizona. And I was in Arizona for, 13 years and did a lot of things while I was there. I worked in fundraising. I worked at a real estate developer. I owned a real estate and insurance company with my ex-husband. I did marketing and PR stuff. And then I moved to Utah, where I worked in brain implant technology, doing communications for a startup, as one does. You go from real estate to brain implants. And yeah. And then last year, I decided to quit my job at that startup in Utah to become a life coach, as one does. You're like, I'm working in frontier technology. I'm going to leave this and go become a life coach. And then my dad got sick and I moved back from the West to my hometown. And I've been here for coming up on a year.
And you probably appreciate the flexibility that one gets as a life coach.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
there's pros and cons. One of the pros is you do have better control of your calendar and your flexibility.
When I quit that job to start a business, I hadn't even started training, right? So like I coach on leaps of faith. That is my thing. And I took a leap to go into coaching. I had not yet started coach training and I had 0 clients, 0 way of making money. And at the time I was like, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. This is so much worse than I expected. And then my dad got sick. And so that was like on top of it, so much worse than I expected. You know, that I'm discovering and have discovered is just part of it, right? It's just part of anytime you start something new, you hit that dream turbulence. You hit that period of time where it's like, holy crap, I couldn't have imagined it would be this bad.
Maybe there's one pivotal moment where you took an extraordinary, significant leap of faith in your career. And I'm wondering what made you make that decision?
Gosh, I think it was, if I had to pick one that became the framework for what I did from there on, it would be quitting my job for a real estate developer. I was doing communications for a master plan community. And I quit that job to join my former husband. and he had a residential real estate practice. And I'd been doing marketing for him for about a year. This was in my mid-20s, like nights and weekends doing marketing, sending the newsletter, doing Facebook, that kind of thing. And I was making $37,000 a year salary for this developer. And my ex, my husband at the time, was like, just quit. Come work with me. We can do so much better. Like, you could be so much more useful and productive in our business than, making 37 grand. And I just was terrified. I was terrified at losing that paycheck and the health insurance and those things. And I just could not wrap my brain around it. And after about a year, finally made the call that I was going to quit, go work with him full time. And the reason that's so important is, what pushed me off the ledge was that 2 times before that, I'd walked away from opportunities that felt too scary. When I was 22, I paid a seat deposit at the University of Virginia Law School, and they'd given me a pretty significant scholarship to go. And I was too scared. Like, I got in, got the money, and then was too scared to actually go. And I'd had another experience like that when I was picking my undergrad. And I just thought, you can't live your life like this. You can't just keep running from these opportunities just because they're uncertain. The lesson and the pain of seeing those opportunities that I didn't take, not because they weren't good, but because I was afraid. That is not a reason to not do something. There are many reasons. I don't think I would have been happy as a lawyer. I think I made the right call in terms of my ultimate happiness, that the law was not for me. But I think that, not going to law school because I didn't want to be a lawyer, that's a great reason to not go. Not going to law school because I was afraid I couldn't cut it, terrible reason. Terrible reason. And so that's why when I'm working with clients, it's figuring out, okay, what's driving this? Is it because you don't want to do the thing? Or is it because you do, but you're afraid?
You do transitions, sometimes the transition happens and you're thinking, why was I afraid of this? This wasn't scary at all. Was there ever a transition where the transition was particularly challenging?
They're all challenging. I actually call it dream turbulence, right? Even when you're going after something you want, you hit the bumps of your dream, right? And it feels rocky and it feels like you've done the wrong thing. And when I was working at this neurotechnology startup, I have no science background. None. Like, I did my degree in English and political science because I was going to go to law school.
Those are my 2 undergraduate degrees too. I
Those
told
were
you
my
we had things in common. I didn't know that.
And then, I'd worked in business. I'd done communications, fundraising, that kind of stuff. And I got this job running communications for this neurotechnology. And I was suddenly surrounded by people with, PhDs in engineering, in neuroscience, neurosurgeons. And I was communicating and trying to speak this language and to translate the scientific stuff for a lay audience, and working with like the major media outlets and stuff like that. And the imposter syndrome was crushing. For 6 or 9 months, I was like, why am I even here? I'm managing people who are smarter than I am, who understand this far better than I do, who are passionate about this in a way that I am not. And that transition from realizing that I was no longer the best doer for the job, and that my function really needed to be stewarding these people around me, the team that I was managing, that transition was bumpy, right? Because I was confronting the limits of my own capability and also realizing, okay, I can still be useful. I can still provide value to this team.
I would estimate and guess, based on everything you said, that you probably held on to an obsession with certainty for a while. And there was a point where you let it go. I'm curious, outside of the transitions, What impact did that have on your life?
Of letting go of certainty.
Well, letting go of the obsession with certainty.
Well, it's made me happier, right? And it's made me a lot easier to get along with, I think. I think there's nothing that defined me so much as this obsession with certainty, right? And needing to be right and needing to know for sure. And all of my decisions, everything I did was based around that. And you even see it around things like scheduling. I don't know how you schedule your time, how you schedule your day, but I used to do mine in 15-minute increments. And there was a period of time when I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning because I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to fit it all in and I'm going to organize it in these 15-minute blocks of time. And even that degree of needing to be certain about my day, um, letting go of that has allowed different things to flow in because I'm not controlling everything anymore, which means that, hey, if there's an opportunity that comes my way, I actually have the time and the space to say yes, where that was not true for many, many years. Control is such an illusion. The attempt to be in control of things just makes us crazy. It just makes us unpleasant people to be around, especially with ourselves. Like when I find myself spinning up into that mode of needing to control everything, I don't really like being around myself.
All right. Speaking of big opportunities, can you share an example of a big, magical, or I can't believe that just happened opportunity that appeared when you followed your destiny?
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many. The biggest one, though, I told you a little about, where I am and how I got here back in my hometown. So I came back last fall of 2023. I've got a coaching business that is making no money. And I'm just really struggling with the cancer and then with this business. And at some point in December, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I quit. I give up. I'm not going to try to Instagram my way there. I'm just going to focus on knowing what I know how to do. And I have written 5 novels, and I knew I was always going to write a self-help book. That was always on the roadmap. But I didn't think I was going to do it for a while. But I realized this is where I need to put my energy, because trying to put it into Instagram marketing is making me crazy. So I put all of my attention into writing that first book, and it is called This Is So Much Worse Than I Expected, and it'll be out in 2024 later this year. But as I was doing that, I started to come back to myself. I started to feel better. I started to feel less angry, less frustrated, less in resistance to everything that was happening. And I had been going this whole time to a co-working space in my hometown. And I started talking with this guy who was starting a bioplastics manufacturing facility in my hometown. They were taking watermelons and turning them into fully biodegradable plastic. And he asked what I did, and I said, I'm a life coach. And I told him a little bit about what I do. And before I finish this part of the story, I want to go way back in time to 2022. December 2022, I got
That
stuck
is
in the
not way, way back in time.
You know what? A lot has happened in 2 years. It feels like a
I'm
thousand
kidding, but
years.
to me, that's this year or last year. But
18 months. 18? Was this
or,
20?
or
Anyway, the year that Southwest melted down on Christmas Eve. Do you remember that? My brother and I got stuck in the airport. So we're in the Phoenix airport for like 12 hours, wondering if we're going to get on a plane. And we were chatting about my work at the neurotech company and about my perspective on coaching. I had been in the coaching world as a client for a lot of years. And I just thought, gosh, what a difference it would make if a company had like coaching and those two things came together within the corporate world and within an organization at the organizational level. And I wrote myself an email about this professional dream I had, like, hey, how could I marry life coaching with corporate stuff? Sent myself this email and never thought about it again. So then come back to 2024. I'm in my hometown. I have a coaching business that isn't making any money. And this guy with a bioplastics company starts talking to me. And I'm like, hey, wouldn't this be a cool thing? And now that is one of the things that I'm doing. I am responsible for bringing coaching principles and professional development to this new startup. And that is one of the roles that I'm playing that if you told me a year ago, Jessica, you're going to go back to Vincennes and you are going to bring life coaching to a bioplastics company, I would have said you were crazy. And that was impossible. And here we are.
Clarity versus certainty. What's the difference between clarity and certainty? And why is it important for people to understand this distinction, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think clarity and certainty. Oh my gosh, how much we talked a little bit about kind of that obsession with certainty and control earlier. I think certainty is needing to know your destination, right? I am going after this thing. This is what I am doing. Versus clarity is simply, I'm going in that direction. I don't know where this road leads exactly, but this is the road I'm taking. I have clarity about the direction I'm going versus certainty about the destination. And I think it's so important to let go of certainty and grasp onto clarity because, like, what has happened in my career, what has happened in yours, the path brings different things to you. It can bring really incredible, really magical things to you if you loosen your grip a little bit, if you're open to those things coming in. But if you're obsessed with a destination, if you're obsessed with certainty, there just isn't space for those things to come in.
Another one of your terms that I would recommend trademarking. Tell me about reverse engineering magic.
Isn't that fun?
I love magic.
All right. So the whole point of this is just, I came up with it to help my clients see that it's okay to be uncertain, right? It's okay to live in a place of I don't know. And what I ask them to do is to reverse engineer the good things in their life. So pick something that you could not have predicted happening. So for me, it would be having a C-level role at a bioplastics company. Could never have predicted that. And then you just walk it backward. How did you end up here? What chain of events led to this thing happening? And I guarantee you, you could not have predicted it. There's no way. There's no part of you from 5 years ago that would have said, well, you know what? My dad will probably get cancer. I'll probably become a life coach. I'll probably move back to Indiana and so on.
I'll probably get stuck in an airport.
Probably get stuck in an airport because Southwest has antiquated systems that, 2 years later save them from the Delta meltdown. Yep, the irony of it.
How do you identify future regrets? And how can they serve as drivers for living this life of continual change and transformation?
Yeah. So future regret is actually a term that a friend and I came up with during COVID. I was in the middle of some relationship change, and I was so nervous and anxious about doing the wrong thing, like making the wrong choice. And oh my gosh, if I do this, then that happens. What if I don't do this? What if there was something I could do to fix this situation? And oh my God, what if I don't do it? And I was paralyzed by that kind of catastrophizing and the fear of future regret. And my friend was like, you don't have FOMO. You don't have the fear of missing out. You have the fear of future regret. And I was like, well, it's true. That's true. I've lived my whole life that way. And now I use that as a tool to help clients see where they're feeling trapped in their lives. Like imagining, like going forward in your life and saying, what would I regret not having done? So if you're faced with a choice, right, between doing something that feels safe versus going after what you want, but that feels scary, if you look back in 5 or 10 or 20 years, are you going to regret that choice? And really connecting with that future version of yourself as you are making those potentially life-changing decisions.
I read an article, and I wish I could remember who wrote it or where it was, but it was it was a clinical study, but it was read like, you know, it was really helpful. It was this person interviewed a bunch of people who were on death's door, you know, on their deathbed, and, you know, asked them like a series of questions, and the answers that surprise, you know, accomplishments at work versus, you know, what do they all regret the most? Spending too much time at work and not enough time with the family, or
Yeah.
whatever. It was this theme of, you know, those those regrets are always the opposite of where everybody's driving to. And
Yep.
I found that article was helpful. But the idea of a future regret is kind of a neat way to look kind of at that same thing, but kind of not. I like it.
Yeah, and for me, I use it as a way to guide my present day decisions, right? So instead of, I don't feel a lot of regret about the past. The past is done. But I try to really be aware of, hey, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I living in alignment with how I see my life going and how I see my future going? You know, when the time came with my dad's health, am I going to make a decision to stay out west or go home? Like there was never a question, right? Because I knew that if I didn't take this opportunity to be there for my family, I would regret that. I would get 50 years down the line and be like, oh, I should have gone home. You know, I should have been there.
What was the inspiration behind the ill-advised podcast?
The
That's the
ill
title.
advised.
I'm not telling you it's ill-advised.
Well, I came up with that title when I was contemplating the leap of faith to start my coaching business and to quit my good paying job at a tech company. And I just thought, like, I know this is ill advised. I know from the outside that it looks ill advised, it looks irresponsible. And that was the inspiration for it because I knew inside that what I was doing was not about the outcome. It wasn't about, oh, I believe I can definitely make more money as a coach. I believe that I can definitely be more successful. I didn't know those things. But what I knew was that I had to take the chance, that it was much more about betting on myself and being a woman who believes in myself. That was the core of that leap of faith. So to everyone else, it looked ill advised to leave behind something good to go for something uncertain. People aren't going to understand that almost ever. But my reasons were different than what anyone could see. So the idea behind ill advised is about knowing your own mind and knowing the truth of your own decisions, even if they look ill advised to other people.
You did mention your a book, right? This is so much worse than I expected. What what key lessons do you hope readers take away from that book?
So this is so much worse than I expected. It'll be out this fall. And it is for people who have taken a leap of faith or who are about to. And the key lesson in that is that you are going to experience a set of kind of universal experiences, universal challenges. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Joseph Campbell or The Hero's Journey. But if you are not, I highly recommend looking into it. But I used his framework of mythology and of storytelling to chart an entrepreneurial course through a leap of faith. So whether that's going into a new field or starting a new business, it's about the things that you experience as you make that leap: the self-doubt, the indecision, the hesitation, and then how you can challenge those things, slay those internal dragons, and come out on the other side.
What would you say, like, there's this, I've talked to people who went to, let's say, marriage counseling, and they figured out in marriage counseling that divorce was unavoidable. And speaking to them afterwards, they don't trash marriage counseling. They said that it allowed us. I mean, is it possible that readers would, the takeaway from the book would be go back? You know, is that even a thought or no?
Oh, to not take the leap?
Right.
I think once again, I believe that you know the decisions that are right for you. So if you're not doing something that you want because of fear, then I think, read the book, go forth, know what you're going to encounter. But if you're being forced into something that you don't want to do, and you read that book and it makes you sick to your stomach, then no, pick something else, choose a different path. But the thing is about the leap of faith and about it being so much worse than you expected. That happens in every part of life. It's not just when you're starting a business. It happens in times of loss, right? It happens in times of tragedy. It happens in times of change, of any kind of change. So, as much as you can want to go back, at some point, you're going to go through this cycle of falling off the edge of a cliff and discovering that you can fly.
All right. Well, if anybody's listening right now or watching, what advice would you give them if they're hesitant to make a bold decision or take a leap of faith in their life?
What advice would I give them? Someone asked me this in an airport a couple months ago. They were like, what would you tell people about starting a business in particular? And what I always tell people is to start by tuning out the noise. Stop asking people for advice, especially people you know. Especially people you know, especially people who have a vested interest in things staying the same. If you are uncertain about your own mind and about where you fall on a decision, if you feel shaky, give yourself some time to center before you go out telling people all your plans and asking for their input.
That's great. I like not people who have an interest because on my podcast, I was talking to someone and he said something in passing, and it wasn't like, here's this profound thing I'm going to say, and then he said it. He said it, and he was mid the next sentence. I was like, wait, stop. Can you repeat what you just said? Because I want to write that down. He said, you know how it is. Everybody wants things to get better, but nobody wants things to change. And it made me kind of think of your subconscious and the terrier berries and everything, in your reptilian brain that's trying to keep the status quo and making you afraid of leaps of faith or changing and stuff. And the people who care about you are going to connect. The people that are close to you are people you connect with, where there's people you just meet who repeatedly follow through and deliver in a positive way, and you still don't quite trust them. It's because your more advanced brain is connecting to them, not that trust brain. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's great advice. Take advice from people who aren't that close to you.
Yeah, and if you're in a place where you know what advice you want, another thing I tell clients often is to be very explicit about the feedback you're looking for. When it comes to your dreams, like if you've hired a consultant to help work on your business or whatever the case is, like sure, take their advice. You hired them, you're paying them for it. But if you're asking someone like, hey, what do you think I should do with my life? I would get more specific. Ask them like, hey, what do you think about this specific thing? Put some guardrails on that conversation. So it's not a free for all about anything and everything they think about you and your decisions.
All right. Well, let's say someone listening or watching this podcast right now wants to know how to get in touch, or wants to know about your podcast, wants to know about your books, wants to know about your coaching, wants whatever it is. What are the best ways to get in touch with you?
So the best way to find all of my stuff is on my website, jessicaell.com. You can find copies of my free books there, podcast, blog, all of those things. And I am also on Instagram at the Jessica Ell.
Well, this has been awesome. I love this interview. Some frightening parallels between us. I mean, if I were you, I'd be more afraid than I am. But it's scary. We had the same double major. We had too many things that were similar. But I totally get where you're coming from and what you're talking about. And I love the way you put it all together. In fact, I see the marketing person in you, and how you take your concepts and you name them. I don't know if the intent is to brand them, but you can package what you're thinking into a name, and I love that. I think that's brilliant. But
Thank you.
to you, to all our listeners, if you're going to grow, chances are strong that you're probably at some point going to have to do something inappropriate.